What will it take for the Penguins to get their first win in Ottawa since 2022? Will it be some new guys stepping up for Pittsburgh or some familiar faces to Senators fans to help propel the Penguins to victory in Canada's capital? Welcome to Penguins Digest. My name is Remington Kuhn. If you haven't already, first and foremost, please press that sub button for the latest news, rumors, and content for your Pittsburgh Penguins. 99.9% of you are not yet subscribed to the channel, so click that sub button. What are you waiting for? Let's dive right into the content. A preview of tonight's game against the Ottawa Senators. First order of business. First key to victory is Sidney Crosby, Rickard Rakell, and Bryan Rust, a line that was red hot in the Penguins' last game against the Montreal Canadiens, showing off their dynamic playmaking ability and their chemistry that they have developed over time. But that first line wing next to Sidney Crosby and Bryan Rust has been a question mark for Pittsburgh until this year, where Rickard Rakell has solidified himself as somebody that can play on that top line with Sid. Let's look at the stats this season. Crosby has 57 points in 49 games in his career against the Ottawa Senators, which is 1 point away from passing Jaromir Jagr for the most in Penguins history against the Sens. Rickard Rakell, obviously, as you see on that graphic, leads the Penguins in goals this season. 11 combined points for those three guys on the Penguins top line against Montreal in that 9-2 drubbing just yesterday. And Rakell had a no-look pass in that game that belonged on SportsCenter top 10. You could say the same about Bryan Rust's first goal, where he legitimately undressed former Penguin Mike Matheson and goalie Sam Montembeault. So obviously that first line is going to be a huge component going into this game against the Senators, trying to fuel the Penguins' offense. There was a scary play in that third period where Sid took a stick up to his visor, but he seemed to be okay, played really well for the rest of the game, so I'm not worried about Sid. Crosby had a great hit in that game against Montreal as well. He did a good job separating men from puck, which is the whole goal of hitting people to begin with. Just people get confused sometimes and think it's just to hit people, but really the primary goal of hitting somebody is to separate men from puck, and Crosby does it better than anybody. One of the most fundamentally sound players in the NHL is Sidney Crosby. And then that brings me to my next key to victory for the Penguins. Speaking of physicality, play physical but stay disciplined. The Penguins took way too many penalties in that last game against Montreal, and they were lucky it didn't bite them. Obviously, Tristan Jarry was up to the task, but this team needs to do a better job of staying disciplined. They're taking way too many penalties, putting their penalty kill in really hard situations, having to kill back-to-back penalties in short spans of time, just making it really difficult on those guys that are trying to kill these penalties for the team and keep them in these games. But obviously, they have the ability to kill penalties. They've shown that ability to kill penalties in recent games. The penalty kill has been hot, but I need the team to stay a little bit more disciplined so that we don't have to see the penalty kill out there nearly as much. And one component of physicality that I have not seen from the Penguins hardly at all this season is hitting. And we just talked about Crosby separating man from puck. You know, we take a look at this graphic, and that is where it stands. The Penguins aren't even on that list as far as top 16. They're actually 24th in the NHL in hits this season, whereas the Ottawa Senators are the third best team at hitting people in the entire National Hockey League, and that is something that they bring every single night. They are a very physical team. They will out-physical you on a daily basis if you do not step up to the challenge and play them the way that they play. And the Penguins obviously want to play their game, their brand of hockey, but I'd like to see a little bit more physicality out of the Penguins to match Ottawa's physicality and really stand up to these bullies up there in Ottawa that they have to deal with in this game. So that's the hitting chart of the league leaders in hits in Ottawa, obviously something that they are strong at. The Penguins are very much the opposite. So I want to see them up for the challenge here tonight in Ottawa. Let's move to our next key to victory, and that is Erik Karlsson. An Erik Karlsson revenge game could be on the horizon. He obviously spent a lot of time in his career with the Senators, 9 seasons and 2 of his 3 Norris trophies wearing those red jerseys for the Senators. And obviously he is one of the best players in Ottawa Senators history. I mean history. He is arguably the best defenseman they've ever had. But we look at Karlsson's stats this season, and obviously, he is an offensive defenseman, so you expect him to put up those high point totals, and he has been able to do that for the Pens. He is one of their team leaders in points, as you saw on the graphic that I showed before. But on this graphic, you see he has 19 points on the season in 31 games. A -9 is what stands out to me. People think Erik Karlsson can't play defense, that he is solely an offensive defenseman. But take a look just to the other side of that graphic and see that his expected plus-minus is only -2. So he's actually an almost even player based on the expected plus-minus rating, which tells me that he's actually playing better than the stats suggest. And I would tend to agree with that, because watching Erik Karlsson lately, he has been actually looking really good for the Penguins. He doesn't get nearly enough credit. Fans would rather criticize Erik Karlsson for his play, but the track record speaks for itself. You look at what this guy has done over his NHL career, over 1,000 games played and 800 points. He is one of the greatest offensive defensemen in NHL history. Obviously, a first-round pick of the Ottawa Senators in 2008. Again, spent 9 seasons with them, 2 Norris trophies, a ton of all-star appearances. He is one of the best Senators ever. Former captain Erik Karlsson. So we get to see Erik Karlsson maybe have a revenge game, maybe help the Penguins beat the Senators after they got swept by them last year. First opportunity of 3 this year. Try to win that first game in Ottawa since 2022. So that would be huge. On to the next key to victory, and that is continue to get depth scoring. This is something that the Penguins need to keep the ball rolling on. This depth scoring has been something of a surprise. I wasn't really expecting them to get going the way that they have been. So let's look at the scoring summary from last game against Montreal. Just the second and third period, of course, but just look at the names on that list. It's not all Crosby, Rakell, and Rust. The fourth line and the third line got in on the action in that game and were able to contribute in other ways. I talked about the guys that actually have been physical for the Penguins this season, and most of them haven't contributed in the points department or the goals department, but they don't have to, right? They're relied on to do different things. Each player knows their role very well. Mike Sullivan, very clear about players' roles and making sure that they execute their roles to the best of their ability. But if you take a look at that graphic, obviously these players that are not really relied on for scoring that much are able to help contribute and take the pressure off the big guns like Crosby and Malkin so that they don't have to do everything. You actually get that depth scoring, and it takes so much pressure off of Crosby, Rust, and Rakell on that first line, where they can contribute the way that they were able to against the Canadiens when they're not feeling pressured to have to do everything offensively and the other lines are chipping in. It really helps the team just work better as a team and let everybody get in on the action. Everybody can join the party in this way. So I love seeing that depth scoring, the guys that aren't really used to being on the scoreboard. We talked about Nieto getting his first goal in 405 days. Nola Chari, not a guy that usually scores goals, but he was able to get rewarded for his hard work and physical play with a goal. And that is just something special to see. Those guys that really aren't used to getting those goals for the Penguins and helping them elevate that offense to the next level with the unlikely contributors. Another thing that we really need to talk about is the special teams staying hot. It's great to have all 4 lines contributing, but on special teams, the Penguins need to be better. Their penalty kill has been hot over the last 10 games, but their power play really only started to heat up against Montreal. And that is something that I need to continue going into this game against the Senators. We talked about how physical of a team they are, and let's look at the actual breakdown of this matchup. While we're at it, you look at this graphic, it tells you everything you need to know about the breakdown between these two teams. You see the power play percentage there. Ottawa, a top 5 power play in the league, running at 27% this season. That is a very high clip for the Senators. They have some really good skill players like Brady Tkachuk that can help elevate that team. Drake Batherson is another one. Josh Norris and Shane Pinto got going their last game where they shut out the Carolina Hurricanes 3-0. So the Penguins are coming off a big win against Montreal, but so are the Senators, coming off a huge win last night against the Carolina Hurricanes, who have been one of the best teams in the Metropolitan Division. So the Penguins power play has to stay hot. They have to keep contributing, and they got to look a lot more like they did in that last game against Montreal, because they have been disastrous up until that game. And if the power play can help contribute, the Penguins have a pretty good chance of beating the Senators, because that is one of their strong points, is special teams. So stay disciplined. Don't give that top 5 power play too many opportunities. And then your own power play, get that thing rolling and continue to move the puck. Karlsson's a big reason why the power play could succeed. I talked about him possibly having a revenge game. That would be a sight to see for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And Penguins fans obviously starting to give up on Erik Karlsson. I'm not. I never will. Love Erik Karlsson. Want to see him do well. And I'm hoping tonight can be the start of great things for Erik Karlsson. One of the few players held off the score sheet in that 9-2 win against the Montreal Canadiens. So let's move on to the last element in this video, and that is Penguins legend Justin Schultz announcing his retirement. Now, this is a player that a lot of you Penguins fans probably remember. He was a two-time Stanley Cup champion with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was one of those offensive defensemen that really could light up the scoreboard, had a great shot, good puck-moving defenseman, was able to contribute to this team in a lot of ways. Again, a big reason why they were able to win those back-to-back Stanley Cups. He was one of those quarterbacks on the power play, just like Kris Letang, and he's just a solid offensive defenseman. I loved watching him. A player nowadays that would remind me of Justin Schultz from time to time is on the Edmonton Oilers, Evan Bouchard. Evan Bouchard is the one player in today's game that I see as being maybe a more well-rounded version of Justin Schultz. He's a great defenseman. I don't want to take away from the greatness of Justin Schultz and what he was able to do in his Penguins career. He was phenomenal as a Pittsburgh Penguin, and I loved watching him. Looking at his numbers, he spent most of his time with the Pittsburgh Penguins, 5 seasons, 2 Stanley Cups. Again, you can't say enough about what he contributed to the Penguins over those 2 years where they were able to win those back-to-back Stanley Cups. Wishing him the best in retirement, but it was worth noting and shouting him out that he is retiring from hockey. Just loved watching him. One of my favorite defensemen to watch during that era of Penguins hockey. So best of luck to you, Justin Schultz, in your retirement, and thank you for everything you did for Pittsburgh, the city, and the team. Thanks you for your contributions. But that will do it for our episode of Penguins Digest. Again, if you haven't already, please press that subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. 99.9% of you are not yet subscribed to Penguins Digest. If you want these updates, these game previews, recaps, rumors, analysis, updates, all of it here on the Penguins Digest channel, go ahead and hit that sub button, and we will not leave you hanging. We will bring you that latest content that you Penguins fans deserve. And let's go Pens tonight here against the Ottawa Senators. See if they can keep it hot in Canada and win another one on the road, coming back home on Tuesday to play the Los Angeles Kings. But first, let's take care of business in Ottawa. Thank you guys for watching this episode, and we will see you on the next episode of Penguins Digest.